As we said, the chat function's available if you've got any questions or comments, just pop them in the chat, or you can use the raising your hand function if you're happy to speak. So today's session is going to be covering the concept of sustainability and SSE's target to achieve net zero by 2030. So just a wee running order. I'm going to give an introduction to myself and SSE. I'll cover a bit on our impact on the planet and an introduction to the concept of sustainability. So after that, I'll run through some key definitions around carbon. A lot of them you'll probably be familiar with. They're talked about quite a lot by the government and by big companies and the media. Then I'll move on after that to energy types and what a renewable and a non-renewable energy source is, and I've got a little quiz. And then I'll cover SSE's roadmap to achieving net zero by 2030, and then we'll close the session and just round up what's been covered. So moving on, a wee introduction about myself. I'm Nicola. I joined SSE in November. I'm a commercial graduate and I'm currently working in the renewables business within the onshore wind investment team. Previous to joining SSE, I worked in the construction industry for just over 2 years. My first role within the industry was an environmental role. I graduated in 2018 with a degree in environmental management. That was from Glasgow Caledonian University. So sustainability has always been quite a big interest of mine. So who are SSE? I'll just show you this wee video. Hopefully this will explain it. Great, so hopefully you can see from that video that SSE are more than just an energy company. We're committed to net zero and dramatically reducing our impact on the planet. Does anyone have any questions so far? Are we all good? No worries, I'll just move on. So we've got a quote here from David Attenborough. Are we happy to suppose that our children may never see an elephant except in a picture book? So maybe take a minute or two to think about that, and maybe what do you think he means by this? Maybe pop your answers in the chat. What you think he means by this quote. Does anyone have any ideas what this quote might mean?
So someone's popped in a couple of comments there that they'll not be alive for our children to see, and he means elephants might go extinct.
Yep, exactly. So it's, yeah, basically that species are going to go extinct, and that future generations won't be able to experience them the way that we have.
Which is just so shocking to think that.
Yeah, it's weird to think that there's like potential for children not to see these animals in real life. Sad. So how does that make you feel when you hear that quote? Is it surprising, not surprising? Any thoughts?
makes Victoria sad. I totally agree.
Yeah, that is really sad, I think.
It's not surprising. Lewis says it's not surprising, but it's still shocking.
Yeah, I would agree with that, yes.
It just shows how much we take these things for granted, that we always expect these things to be there in our lives, you know, even from afar, but maybe not.
Yeah, so it's quite a shocking quote when you think about it, especially when you think about it in terms of sustainability, that we're impacting future generations in such a negative way. So just move on. We've got 4 photos here. They're pretty shocking as well, I would say. Top left, we've got a landfill. Next to that is a coal power plant. Then we've got a polar bear and an overcrowded city. So take a minute to think, have a look at these photos and pop in the chat what you think these 4 photos have in common. And there's no right answer. So have a wee think.
Thomas has put in humans, and I suspect that means that it's humans that are creating the, you know, these problems that these pictures are depicting.
Yeah, that's spot on. It's the 4 of these photos are all human impacts. It's to do with how we treat the planet. So yeah, they're all directly related to humans in some way, all in different ways. They're all different impacts, but
Johnny's popped in that humans are causing climate change.
yep, that's exactly it.
What I can see, and I know that this is the third time we've been through this presentation for us, Nicola, but the more it's really getting me thinking that actually, especially when you look at the picture on the bottom right about the, you know, the street, the busy street, that actually every single person, one individual there doesn't realise and see the bird's eye view of the picture. You know, they all just think they are just going about their life.
Yeah.
So probably completely unaware. So David's mentioned the top 2 and bottom right are showing humans are destroying the planet, and the bottom left is showing the aftermath of and what's suffering.
Yeah, I like that because the people in the photo in the city aren't necessarily suffering. So yeah, what you're saying there is spot on. That's what's causing that the photo in the bottom left. Really, it's those 3 things of, you know, the pollution, the waste. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, I think. Yeah, so basically there are all impacts that we have on the planet. So what steps do you think we could take to stop this from getting worse? Does anyone have any ideas? Again, there's no one right answer. There's probably loads of things. Does anyone have any thoughts? No, no worries. So the question is, what do you think we can do to stop this from being like such a bad, like from getting worse in future?
So Danette's mentioned try to make a change.
Yep, that's it. We need to change. But does anyone have any ideas on what we could do to change or what we should change?
Overconsumption, reduce pollutants, stop burning fossil fuels, government regulations, reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yeah, they're all great. And I like the government regulations. I think that's quite an important one because governments drive change quite a lot. So for them to put in regulations is a really important point. Yeah, recycle, again, that's a great point, and it's directly related to the landfill. You know, if we were recycling and reusing and reducing our waste, we might not have the need for landfills on that scale. Great, some brilliant answers there. So just move on. Another question. And what do you think sustainability means, or what does sustainability mean to you? Again, there's no right or wrong answer here, really. Just pop your answers in the chat function if you can think of anything.
This is one of those where you know what it means in your head. It's just trying to put it down, isn't it? So Rebecca's mentioned reducing your carbon footprint.
Yep, that's great.
Great answer. Something lasting a period of time. Yes.
Yeah, that's important. I think we'll come on to a definition and that's focused on that lasting a period of time. Yep.
It's probably a contribution of the last two comments, isn't it? Reducing your carbon footprint over a lasting period of time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Great. So I'll just move on to the definition then. So yeah, it ties into what both of you have said, that and it comes from the Brundtland Commission. This is the most widely used definition of sustainable development. So it defines sustainability as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So really, we should be living in a way that only uses what we need, and that will allow future generations to have the same resources available to support a good quality of life. So by that definition, we should only be using one planet or less worth of resources, as this is all we have. And going above this is unsustainable because we'll end up running out of resources and there'll be nothing for the next generation. So I've got a little tool here. Just open this up. And this measures the number of planet Earths we need to sustain the way we currently live, to provide resources and absorb our waste. So it's nearly at 1.8 planets, which is obviously not sustainable because we only have one planet. So that means the way we're living currently, we're going to run out of resources or space for waste. So I'll scroll down, I've got a couple more. I've got a calculator here that shows the time left to the end of seafood. So really in just over 26 years, there'll be no seafood left in the world, going by the way we currently fish. And we've got a couple more here. So this is deforestation. We've got CO2 emissions and chemical production. And you can see these are rapidly increasing every second. So really shows that we're impacting the planet in a number of different ways. It's not as simple as just greenhouse gas emissions. We're doing so many different things to negatively impact the planet. Does anyone have any thoughts on these figures? Anything shocking, or is anyone not surprised? Or any questions on it? For me, I said in the previous session as well, the thing that shocked me the most was the seafood. To think that in 26 years, if we carry on with the fishing, we'll have no seafood in the supermarkets. That's crazy.
Thomas has said they're high than he thought, but he knew they were high. Looks not surprised.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are high. Yeah, you do expect our carbon emissions to be high. You do hear about it in the news. So, yeah. Good points in the chat there. I like that from Lewis. It's really not that surprising at all, but it still hurts. Yeah, it's still not nice to know that we're having this impact on the planet. Great. So just move on from that. I'm going to go through some definitions of phrases and words you've probably all heard of by now on TV, maybe from the government or from large companies around carbon. So the first one we've got is carbon dioxide, or CO2. It's a chemical compound. It's made up of carbon and oxygen. It's an end product from burning certain things, such as fossil fuels like coal. because coal is made of carbon. So there's already low levels of CO2 naturally in the atmosphere. It acts as a greenhouse gas, so it heats up the planet. So when large quantities of this is released into the atmosphere from burning fossil fuels, the greenhouse effect accelerates, and this causes global warming and climate change. Carbon dioxide is not the only greenhouse gas. There's others that have the same effect, like methane and nitrous oxide. So next up, we've got net zero. So this is the balance between the amount of these gases that we produce and the amount that we remove. So when we reach net zero, we aren't emitting any more than we take out. Carbon neutral is the same as the term used to describe something that is net zero. So carbon neutrality is achieved when we reach the balance between gases removed and gases emitted. Great. So next up, we've got carbon footprint. So that's the total greenhouse gas emissions of an individual, a business, or a product. So every person and every business has a carbon footprint. And lastly, we've got carbon offsetting. So this is the action that we take to reach the balance that I mentioned before to become carbon neutral. So these actions are things that take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, such as planting trees. Large companies who participate in offsetting tend to pay offsetting organisations to plant the trees on their behalf, and they pay based on how much they emit. So the more they emit, the more they pay. So this can be criticised because it isn't encouraging a reduction of emissions. Through offsetting logic, companies could technically just emit as much as they like as long as they've got enough money to pay the bill for offsetting. So you'll see a difference when we cover the SSE's 2030 sustainability targets, that it's not about offsetting, it's about reductions. Great. Any questions on definitions?
So we've got a question in there from Johnny. Is that like how Grangemouth is only allowed to burn the gas at certain times?
Yeah, so they're limited. Yeah, it's to do with the emissions. Grangemouth, they're limited by SEPA, so that's like the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency. I think they set times where they're allowed to burn. And yeah, it's just to do with the emissions, I think so. Yep, great. So moving on, we went over carbon footprinting. So we're going to calculate our personal carbon footprint. I'll put this wee link in the chat, make it easier. So it's just a questionnaire really about your lifestyle, and it will tell you your carbon footprint at the end. And if anyone has any issues getting onto the website, just pop a wee note in the chat. Give you 5 minutes or so to go over that. Has everyone managed to do that or nearly done? I've got my result and it's not great. So you can see that my impact's higher than the target.
Mine was 99%. So it was green.
Yeah, I think I had a bit of an unfair disadvantage. I just bought furniture. I've just bought my first house, so
Oh,
that's not
it's
great.
balancing though, isn't it? Because you still need things to sit on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, certainly hearing the results from previous sessions and, quite a lot of people being in the green area has a lot to do with probably the year we've had and not quite venturing further than our homes or local areas. So it'll be interesting to see this in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
At least we've got the calculator there now as a resource to keep track for ourselves now.
Yeah, I
What
think
did
it's quite an
everyone else?
interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah, what results did everyone else get? Just pop them in the chat function. It's really interesting to see.
Yeah, the last sessions we've had quite a contrast, and it's quite interesting how it varies so much.
I know.
Did anyone get something that they were really surprised? Maybe it was really low, or 89, 90, that's good.
If it was green look, then I think that's good.
Yeah, if you scroll down, or, well, it's here, this image is quite good because the target's 10.5 tonnes. So mine is not great. It's quite a good way to see it. And then the graph here shows your footprint compared to the UK average.
It's very interesting. So I think anywhere under 100 is okay, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
The number under 100 when it's green is okay. Anyone else want to share?
No, no worries. Just move on then. Okay, so next we're going to look at energy sources. So a renewable energy source, something that's not going to run out. It's taken from a natural source and it replenishes constantly. So things like the sun. And then you've got non-renewable energy sources that come from something that will run out or not be replenished in our lifetime. So that's things like coal. So I've got a little quiz here on some renewable energy statistics. We'll see who can get 4. It's quite a tough quiz. If you don't know the answers, just have a guess. So question 1. In 2019, what percentage of electricity came from renewable sources in the UK and Ireland? Is it 38%, 48%, or 58%? And then next up, we've got in 2020, what percentage of car registrations were from hybrid or electric cars in the UK and Ireland? Is it 10%, 2%, or 18%? And question 3. In 2018, what percentage of the world's electricity came from renewable energy sources? Was it 15%, 26%, or 37%? Okay, and last, as of 2020, what's the most commonly used renewable energy source globally? Is it solar, wind, or hydro? So is everyone okay for me to go through the answers? Let's go. So question 1, So the answer was 48% of electricity came from renewable sources in the UK and Ireland. Question 2, it was 10% of car registrations in the UK and Ireland in 2020 were hybrid or electric. And then 26% of electricity globally came from renewable sources in 2018. And then last, hydro was the most commonly used renewable source of energy in 2020. Did anyone get 4? It's quite a tough quiz, so. Or even 3, that's still a really good score. All right, so one last question on renewable energy. It's another one, there's no right or wrong answer. Can anyone tell me why renewable energy production is important? Just pop your answers in the chat if you have a think about it.
We've got a question from Johnny. Are hybrid cars not worse for the environment in the long run because of how many batteries are in them?
Well, that's a good question, because there is a debate around batteries, lithium-ion batteries, and their impact on the environment, but they also don't emit any harmful gases. So you've kind of got to weigh up, I suppose. A lot of people argue the greenhouse gases are more damaging, and it's all about getting kind of correct disposal procedures in place for the batteries, which is something that's definitely in progress with the increase in hybrid and electric vehicles. Yeah, good question. So does anyone have any ideas why renewable energy production is important? There's loads of different things, and we've probably covered quite a few of them.
We only have one planet.
Yep, exactly. Coal won't last forever.
And Johnny says so we don't waste a lot of energy, which is great.
Yep. Great. Does anyone else have any ideas? No worries. So it's just things that we've already kind of mentioned. We want to reduce the impact of climate change. So cutting down greenhouse gas emissions really helps with that. Want to achieve net zero, reduce kind of your dependency on fossil fuels, especially when we've said they won't last forever. They will run out at some point and we can't be left without energy. And also for jobs, if the coal and oil will run out eventually, and people who work in these industries will obviously need jobs, so developing renewable energy helps with that. So moving on, we're going to cover SSE's commitment to sustainability. So I've got a wee clip here that will just kind of highlight that.
SSE Renewables has a clear vision. It's to play our part in decarbonising electricity generation in the UK, Ireland and beyond, so that we help meet a new global ambition for net zero emissions by 2050. Turning wind and water into energy today and making tomorrow's low-carbon world a reality. Part of the FTSE-listed SSE plc, our strategy is to drive the transition to a low-carbon future through the world-class development, construction and operation of our fleet of onshore and offshore wind sites and flexible hydro. We're the leading owner and operator of the largest renewable energy fleet in the UK and Ireland, with 4 gigawatts of installed capacity from hydroelectric power to onshore and offshore wind. And we're developing new projects to power the low-carbon future for the next generation. We have the largest offshore wind pipeline of any UK company, with over 7 gigawatts in development in the UK and Ireland. We have another gigawatt of onshore wind in development in the same markets, and our ambition is to bring our capability, drive and ingenuity to new markets globally in our pursuit of our green energy goals. At SSE Renewables, we have unrivaled expertise in our in-house development teams who are proudly growing our portfolio. These talented and inventive people are choosing the best sites to harness the incredible potential of wind and water while protecting and enhancing our natural environment. And we're engaging closely with host communities to make sure our projects bring real benefits to the many people who live and work near them. That's why our partners and other asset owners trust SSE Renewables to run their plant too, to help deliver clean, green energy to millions of customers. Across our organisation and in every one of our teams, our people at SSE Renewables stand ready to play our part in driving the new ambition we need towards a 2050 net zero goal and to lead the fight against climate change, so that our generation creates a better world of energy for the next.
Great, so from that video, it's hopefully clear that SSE are making a commitment to being a sustainable net zero business. And a big part of this is the 2030 sustainability goals that SSE have set themselves. So these are ambitious targets aiming to become a more sustainable business. And these include reducing carbon intensity of the electricity we generate by 60%. We want to help accommodate 10 million electric vehicles by building infrastructure like charging hubs. We want to develop and build more renewable energy and pay our staff a living wage and be a fair tax company. So SSE have aligned these goals with the Paris Agreement targets and recognise that meeting their 2030 targets will have a positive impact towards meeting the Paris Agreement. So the Paris Agreement states that the world's nations need to keep global temperatures below 2 degrees, limit the amount of greenhouse gases that are emitted by human activity, review each country's contribution to cutting emissions, and that rich nations should help poorer nations adapt to climate change and support them on their journey to renewable energy switch. Does anyone have any questions on anything covered in this slide? No, no problem. So that's the end of the session. Just to round up what we've covered. So we went over a definition of sustainability and sustainable development. Then we moved on to carbon definitions and our own carbon footprint and the activities that we take part in our day-to-day life that can impact this. Then we went through the difference between renewable and non-renewable sources of energy. And we looked at SSE's commitment to be a sustainable business and the targets they're aiming to achieve by 2030. So does anyone have any questions on anything that I've covered? Or any comments or thoughts?
It's not so much of a question, Nicola, but just on the back of our previous sessions and, you know, something we kind of finished the last session with was really about how we feel we take this information away now and help it impact our own individual impact on the world and the environment and those targets. So it'd be great to hear from everyone if there was one change that you make, you know, after this call in your own personal life, you know, knowing the information you know now and your own carbon footprint score that you got, what will you do differently, if anything? I think there was a lot of switching lights off and heaters on, putting more jumpers on, wasn't there?
Yeah. Yeah, it can be simple things or small things that just make an impact. Does anyone have any ideas on things they're going to do to reduce their impact?
Recycle.
Great. Yeah, I like that, Johnny. Wear more of my hoodies. It saves on the heating. If you've got a hoodie on, you don't need to put the heating on straight away. Yeah, use of single-use plastics. That's a great one. And it's one that's been in the media quite a lot on how negatively they can impact ecosystems. Great. Does anyone else have anything?
I've recently turned to veggie, no meat, which is a biggie, but enjoying it so far. Try and reuse things more. Yeah, definitely.
Great. Yeah, they're all really good little changes to make. So that's all I had. Thanks everyone so much for attending and for participating. I really hope you got something out of the session, found it really interesting, hopefully, and that you take it away and kind of be more aware of our impact on the planet.
Definitely, that was such a helpful session, Nicola, and I think it's an eye-opener, quite a wow factor to this particular session. See lots of claps at the bottom of the screen, which is fantastic and just
That's
demonstrate, you know, that everyone's taken something away that they're going to find useful. It might be their own personal impact on the environment, or it might be, you know, more of an insight from a career perspective, you know, and wanting to make that type of impact. So I hope you've all enjoyed it. I'm going to stop recording now, but